Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download.
There we go.
There we go. Just a matter of switching some buttons. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's Wednesday, and apparently just as good to do a show on a Wednesday as a Tuesday. Everything goes just as flows just as easily. Welcome to the show. We have a really important show tonight because we're going to take a look at what's been going on in Kenosha and in Portland and the intensity around all the tension really that's being built up between various groups, including Black Lives Matter, including Blue Lives Matter, and the Proud Boys and others. I'd like to welcome Eric Garland, who's here as always on the show. Hi, Eric. How are you? And from Portland itself, someone you may know from Twitter as Bad Company, which is what the baddest handle you could find in the world. Hello, Bad Company, Carl Seislove. How are you doing?
How you doing? Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm really well. I was surprised to know or find out that you are a resident of Portland, but also a resident of downtown Portland.
I've been living downtown since 2000.
And so you've have a front row seat to basically what's been going on there in enormous detail.
Yes, I do. Pretty much ever since, I'd say 2003, when the first May Day protests were, the very first violent riots here in Portland. I've been monitoring and watching ever since. I usually watch from a distance, but I don't get involved. I don't march with them or pick sides, anything. I just observe. And I've been doing that since basically 2003.
So it's been 95 days of protests there, or so. Well, it's more than that, right? It's probably almost
95, 96, yeah, about that.
It's a lot of days for a city like that to be undergoing so much torment. I mean, it's a small city, really, and we're talking about a city that's generally quite peaceful. I mean, there's not a lot that goes on in Portland that needs to result in this kind of violence. And you've had 95 days or more of just accelerated tension and conflict. So, from your perspective, where's that coming from?
Well, a lot of it started. We can all put it back to Trump, but it all started in 2016. When the Patriot Prayer started coming to Portland and started holding their rallies, and these rallies got a little worse and a little worse. And I believe that the Proud Boys kind of infiltrated Patriot Prayer, so they wound up becoming friends. And there was a cause behind Proud Boys, as we all know. The Proud Boys came from Roger Stone. Roger Stone had come to Salem with the Proud Boys when this all first started. So he was kind of sitting in a bar in Salem bragging about all of this. This was, I believe, in 2017. And Kyle Chapman, all the players were here in Portland. And this is also where you've probably heard the name Jeremy Christian, who was also a member of Patriot Prayer. He was also here. I was downtown myself and had met Joey Gibson on these infamous days. Here we are.
We should mention is the founder of Patriot Prayer. Right?
Patriot Prayer is his baby, yes.
Which is a hate group according to this Southern Poverty Law Center, and it appears.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, it seems kind of funny that he calls himself Patriot Prayer and a Christian, and he likes to throw around Bible quotes, but as I always tell people, wherever Joey Gibson goes, violence follows.
And the Proud Boys, which are associated with Stone for sure, are also considered a hate group of some sort, and they've connected all these militias around the country into sort of a network of militias, if that's an accurate way of describing them.
You would say the Proud Boys, the Boogaloos, the Three Percenters, some of Oath Keepers, but yeah, pretty much the majority of those groups, they are all combined now.
Which is interesting because they all sort of have a central sort of mission and command and control, if you want. And all of this has been building in Portland because of the federal courthouse, which is not what caused the death last week, but it is what
No.
has built up the tension. So what was the courthouse issue all about?
Well, it's kind of a funny thing because this all started back when George Floyd was murdered. Was it May 25th, May 26th is when the protest really began. So we had peaceful protest here in June, in the beginning of June, and it was beautiful. And this town is known for its protests, mostly peaceful. We have a reputation for that. It's always been very peaceful here, but we always have the agitators too, of course. They always show up to every event. That happens across the country, across the board. But yeah.
But this has been building up. You've had two sides then fighting against each other for 90 days. The police caught in the middle. And then this past weekend, things really changed. Because after Kenosha, when there was a 17-year-old that walked into the crowd and killed two people there, or at least shot one person and killed another person. It
Correct.
became that 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, I think is his name,
Rittenhouse,
out of town, came in and committed that crime in sort of brazen fashion. And there was immediate concern because Portland was coming next with a big march on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us a little bit more about what that march was intended to be.
Well, most of the protests here that we've had, like I was saying, started back in June. So we've had these going on for a long time. The peaceful protesters did a pretty good job of extricating themselves from the situation, and it just kind of slowly got worse and worse. It was the Portland Police Building first, which is actually our jail, was one of the buildings that were attacked first. It had nothing to do with the federal building in the beginning. That didn't happen until actually the feds wind up showing up. They didn't show up here until July 4th.
Oh.
So between June 1st and July 4th, it's all on the Portland Police and the mayor. It's his baby, no matter what he tries to say. And on June 3rd was the first day Portland Police actually fired tear gas on protesters. That's way before the feds got here.
Interesting.
The feds didn't get here, like I said, until July 4th because the protests were getting so big downtown that it kind of moved from the building, the police department, which is right next door to the Fed building, to the Fed building. But the Portland Police Department and the mayor did not protect that building. They only protected their own. They left the building wide open. And the protesters, the violent protesters that came in, took advantage of that and started breaking in and trying to set it on fire also.
July 4th is an interesting date. That's the date that Donald Trump began to change his tune on what he thought the election was going to be about. He started talking about the new far left fascism. He talked about the evil representations of that far left fascism, and he talks about them wanting the end of America. He made this in a couple of speeches. In one of them, I'll quote him here. He said, "American heroes defeated the Nazis, dethroned the fascists, toppled the communists, saved American values, upheld American principles, and closed down? Or something?
Chase down the terrorists to the very ends of the earth."
There you go. And so now we're in the process of defeating the radical left. Who knew? They were quite like the Marxists or the anarchists and the agitators, the looters, and people who, in many instances, have absolutely no clue of what they're doing. This is Donald Trump's choice of words, but
They
you can
have
see
no
that he's
clue what
setting
they're
up.
doing. How are they taking over America? Is this a slapstick comedy where they accidentally take over America?
They just bungled their way into it.
Antifa really is too discombobulated to take over their own neighborhood, let alone America.
Right. It's true that they're a bit of a.
It's not an organization. It's not. It just isn't, and I don't care what they say. And I know this for a fact in Portland. Even the Antifa that's here is called Black Bloc. That's not the real Antifa. That's the alt-right's created version of Antifa. Antifa doesn't even come downtown anymore because the leader of the original Rose City Antifa, which is actually not a leader, it's a very loose-knit group. But Joey Gibson decided to go over there and attack them at their bar, which is called the Cider Riot. Joey Gibson and his clan, the Patriot Boys, went to this bar and specifically went to confront Antifa. And in the meantime, we got Antifa over here on the other side coordinating in a different way. Now, the Black Bloc that we have here, these guys are financed. The original Rose City Antifa is not financed.
Right. I heard that they had a lot of sort of.
I've met the leaders. If you remember the video that I showed you of Antifa with the one from Project Veritas, that video, I've met the leaders of Black Bloc. I stood right in the middle of those guys. I was surrounded by them. It's kind of funny. My son was with me that day when Jeff Sessions was here at the immigrations building. I decided to go over there and see what they were going to do, and I wound up with myself right smack dab in the middle of Antifa. And I'm sitting there filming Jeff Sessions, and all these Antifa people are circling me with their cell phones filming my butt. My son's all panicking, thinking I'm going to get my ass kicked and blah, blah, blah. And, and I finally, it's kind of funny because they were trying to figure out why I was there. As you see, I was dressed just like I am in this picture. Why is this military vet doing here? What's he doing? And I finally yelled over at Jeff Sessions as he got out of the car and said, "Hey, you racist piece of shit." Dancing around me, and they walked me over to this older couple, which is talked about in that video, the older white couple, and I got to talk to them for a while and got to listen to them and kind of figured out what the heck was going on here. And Antifa, these guys, Black Bloc, actually unmasked themselves in front of me. They all took off their mask.
Oh, wow. Did you know?
Yeah, it was pretty.
People?
No, they were all young white kids. There was no Mexicans. There was no blacks. From the neighborhoods, yeah. They're all, I would say, anywhere between the ages of 17 to 25. They're all pretty young kids.
It's surprising to think of a left-wing organization not having any people in it.
Having any what?
No, you said there were no black people in amongst the members?
I did not see any members. Now, the original Antifa, the one everybody talks about, yes, they are blacks, Mexicans, whatever, every race. But this Black Bloc is a little bit different.
What do you think is the cause of that difference? Is it they didn't mention in that video, and it's Project Veritas, and I discount everything they say all the time, but I will say that they say that there's a European owner, I guess, or manager of the place.
That part, these people that I talked to were about my age, both white. They didn't have accents, so I didn't feel that they were from anywhere else. They weren't super talkative, but they were talkative enough that I could get a sense of what the heck was going on. I knew that they were the guys who led this group of this Black Bloc. It was obvious. They were like the generals.
And it looks so organized inside.
They are organized. That's why I say they're financed, because you can tell by their uniforms, their shields. Everything is all uniform. Antifa is not uniform, and Antifa has never been uniform. Black Bloc is uniformed.
Interesting. Eric, what does that make you think?
Well, I had one.
It's kind of crazy.
You're a veteran, you'd say, right?
Correct.
Would you say you have a good sense of when you see somebody in a high tension situation? Can you tell when somebody may possibly be a military member or a veteran and has been trained?
Most of the time, yes.
As opposed to being kids who are, mixing themselves up in a high tension situation, you can just eyeball that, right? Yes. Do you ever see would you differentiate between the Black Bloc and the regular Antifa? Would you say you see more people that are kind of calm in those situations in the Black Bloc group than the others, or?
Yes, I absolutely. Antifa is more about protesting their cause, whatever it may be. They don't necessarily come and cause violence. These guys, they do. They are here specifically to confront the police, period.
Interesting. And so we'll learn more about it as this show goes on, because there's so much to learn about Antifa and about the Proud Boys and about Patriot Prayer. And I want to go and focus specifically about the night that Jay Bishop died. Now, do you know Jay Bishop? Do you know who he is?
No, I do not.
So he's
I know him from lots of pictures, lots of videos, and all that stuff. As I've told you before, I have people who actually track the Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer. So he's been known of for quite a while. He's a known entity in Portland. He's been arrested here before with firearms on him. He wasn't even allowed to be in Portland. He's from Astoria, Oregon. So the whole story of him being a local and he's trying to stick up for his city, blah, 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 it's a bunch of BS.
He's not even from the town.
Same with
I'm surprised to hear that.
No, same with Joey Gibson. None of these guys are from here. Joey Gibson is from Vancouver, Washington. He's banned from Portland, to be honest.
What's he doing there then?
Trying to call shit for Ted Wheeler.
And Ted Wheeler is
his whole goal is to go after Ted Wheeler.
Is Ted Wheeler the mayor?
Ted Wheeler's the mayor.
Okay.
And he's stuck in a pretty bad spot, to say the least.
Because he's
so that would make him an intentional, like, violent agitator, not somebody exercising their First Amendment rights per se.
Well, I'll tell you something about Joey. He doesn't cause the violence. He is aggressive and he gets in people's face and tries to incite them. But it's his guys around him that do the violence. Tiny Tejas, for one. He just got arrested a week ago. He's now going to prison. We finally got him.
Right.
Chandler and Jay are both also friends of Joey Gibson's. These are the guys who do the thuggery. Joey doesn't do the thuggery. He's smart. He's not a dumb guy. He's smart.
Now you're talking about
he knows to stay out of the fray.
Joey Gibson, the founder, right, of the Patriot.
Correct.
And who's Jay Bishop then? Jay Bishop is whom in the story?
He's a member of Patriot Prayer also. He's a friend of Joey Gibson's. He's out of Astoria, Oregon. These guys meet. Every time that Joey Gibson has a protest, pretty much, these are the guys that wind up going with him. Wherever he does it in Salem, Vancouver, Camas, or Portland, Oregon, that's where they go. Wherever Joey goes, they go.
Now, Jay Bishop is not a real name. It is, in fact,
no, I can't.
Aaron Danielson.
Danielson, yeah.
Yeah. And he landed up dying on that Saturday night. It was Saturday night.
The moment he got, 2 seconds after he got shot in the chest, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a big churn of events for Portland. We've not seen death in the recent protests and certainly not caused in this fashion. And it's all caught on tape, which is another interesting feature of these latest uprisings, whether it's Kenosha or Minneapolis, wherever.
Did you actually get a chance to see Did you actually get to see the videographer, the journalist who actually took the video on CNN?
I didn't see that piece, but I looked into him and I did read a lot of his descriptions. And
it's worth checking it out because he does the timeline very, very well. You can understand if you listen to him in the timeline that he photographs, you can hear exactly what happened.
Okay, I'll post that after the show. But in the meantime, I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes playing you a tape of what happened that day. You'll see at the top of the story, you'll see Jay Bishop and his friend who's with him but survived that particular visit.
Chandler Pappas.
Yeah. They had previously been protesting in other parts of the area and then decided to go downtown. And once downtown, they found somebody that they believed, or it sounds like they believe because they say this out loud, that there is one of them. And I think they're referring to someone who is part of Antifa. There's a mace release, we think, that came from these guys, from either Jay or his friend, that targeted this guy, the shooter. And then the shooter, in response, it feels like in response, pulls out a gun and then shoots two shots, right? Maybe three.
Correct.
2 shots, but one of them.
I think he was trying to shoot at both of them, but he missed Chandler.
And then Jay Bishop collapses a few meters away and dies. And what we're going to see is the video that was caught on tape of this event. It's interesting that it's the cameraman who's there at that time. I maybe it's possible. Then I'm going to.
It was pretty interesting, and Andy No got this pretty darn fast too to Joe Posobiec.
Yeah, it all gets uploaded very quickly and distributed through
very quickly.
So I'll warn you.
Joe, you mean Jack Posobiec?
Jack, yeah, I like to call him Joe Blow.
Okay, so we're saying this is
or Posobiec.
So this is a video that was shot from a pretty convenient angle and was uploaded, chop by Mr. Posobiec.
It was put up by, I can't remember the journalist's name. He's a known journalist. He had nothing to do with these guys. I am sure that somebody in their group always follows this guy, like Sergio Ramos or the few other photogs that come down here and film. So it's easy to go on Twitter and follow them and then ship their stuff out once they post.
I know that went into Jack Posobiec. So that he was involved in another tape. This is a tape.
Well, somehow Andy got a hold of the tape, and somehow it wound up with Jack, and Jack put it up on Twitter with his false narrative.
I think the Oregonian,
and it happened pretty quick.
The Oregonian.
I'm not sure if
did a good thorough job going back into the backstory of all of this and investigated the camera person, just a live streamer, out of work, was having to do just looking for something.
Yeah.
They didn't find anything suspicious in his background. And then there is this video clip afterwards of Jay Bishop's friend, who also describes the events of the night. He's talking to a conservative media outlet, a Christian conservative.
Correct. I watched that.
And you cannot really believe what he's describing, but it's worth it for us to hear what's coming out of this man's mouth, because it gives you a sense of the world that they are either constructing or living in. So all of this is to say is I'm warning you that this is a version of reality that may be part of a narrative build. It may be part of something that someone is constructing. But I want to try to take all that apart today and see if we can figure out exactly how this event took place and how it looks so similar to other events and how it looks so similar to other events around the world. So it's a tall order for tonight's show, but I think we'll get to some of that. Here's the tape. This is real video. No one's discounting that this has actually happened. But be aware that it may be coming from a certain perspective or distributed from that perspective. Here we go.
Premonitions. Not really kind of scared.
So this is the alleged shooter, who's also a victim, of course. He's crossing the intersection in the white shirt. And meeting him up the street are these two Patriot Prayer members that we've just spoken about. One of them dies. He stumbles away and collapses. Here's a close-up version of that. And that's Jay lying.
They hunted him down. They hunted us down. They recognized our Patriot Prayer hats. For anybody who doesn't know Patriot Prayer, Joey Gibson, the Citizens Advocate, is a good man. We support him. He's a Christian and conservative. So they identified our hats. We've got a couple of them right here. Pull it out. And that's what they said. That's what they said. We turned around. It didn't even register that somebody was pointing a gun at us until the shots went off and he took off running. The shooter took off running. And, it takes a second for you to process everything that happened. Did he just shoot at me? Okay. I'm okay. Turn over. Jay's dead.
Premonitions.
Right. So that's the sequence of events. It's disturbing video, obviously. Let me get your questions and takeaways first, if you guys want to just.
Do we have the identity of the shooter?
Not as of yet. They are aware of who he is, but they're not releasing any information and as of now until the complete investigation is completely done. Because there's a lot of moving parts here, especially with the groups, the alt-right, the alt-left. I mean, there's a lot to play with here.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I called the police department today and asked them about what they were planning to release the names, and they didn't get back to me yet. I'm sure I'm not the only person calling, but there's obviously a big demand. It is interesting that in both cases, I
actually believe the FBI is involved now.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, look, it's obviously white shooters white attackers on both sides, which has been different from the cases we've seen in the past. This has been a particularly race story in the last few months, but this story is a little bit different because it's about left versus right. And I know that's been Portland's story. It's been different than the Black Lives Matter story, but it's important to think about these guys as being all sort of from white groups that are fighting against each other in that space. And it is interesting that they view themselves as having some sort of natural rights. I think they called it as there being a sort of a law that they need to follow that is above sort of the Constitution of America, maybe that is more about the Christian law. That's sort of their grounding at which they base their thinking in. Is that correct?
The judge not lest you be judged. The let he who is without sin cast the first stone. That law.
That law.
That law.
Yeah, you might be familiar with some of that. So it's
those are nice. I like them.
They're good laws, but they're not the laws of the United States. And
well, it's kind of funny that these guys decide. it's kind of funny these guys decided to have their battleground in the most liberal, left-leaning city in America.
Huh.
We're more liberal than San Francisco used to be. This town is so liberal it's not even funny. So it's everything that they hate. Honestly, it's everything they hate. This is what Portland represents.
Probably.
It's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So
This has been a Democratic state since 1987. But the Republicans are the majority in this state. Unfortunately, they're not in Portland. They're all out in Eastern Oregon. But they are the majority of the voters here. But a Democrat always wins. Go figure. There's 3 million people in the state of Oregon. 2 million of them live in the Portland metro area.
Hmm.
And so he said they were going to war with the Liberals, and that's probably why they chose it. But it does seem chosen, right? This doesn't seem like a real reason for it to be there.
I believe in and again, I'm no expert, of course. I'm not a cop. I'm none of those things. But I believe it goes back to Ted Wheeler standing up to Trump when ICE was being attacked here. ICE got assaulted by the same group of people, and the city would not go help them. As a matter of fact, it was me who wound up asking Ted on his Twitter feed to send the police, and I told him why. I said, you need to send the police to help ICE, because if you do not do this, you will not, and I repeat, not get federal help in the future. You're going to need their help. I promise you this. He sent his police the very next day and shut it down. But unfortunately, he stood up to Trump, and Trump was not happy about that. So Big Ted Wheeler put a big giant target on his back when he did what he did with ICE. And that's what inflated. It's been going on before that, but that's what that combusted it.
Okay, that's interesting. Eric, any questions, or should I keep trucking along here?
Well, I just looking at that video, I'd be interested to see somebody in a urban combat experience or FBI crime scene analysis look at that video, because it seemed like the time between the mace or tear gas or whatever pepper spray is deployed and the time to discharge of a firearm is under 2 seconds.
Yeah, super quick.
It was 2 seconds. That's how much I've watched it about 1,000 times, and 2 seconds is the marker. And if you really watch the sequence, you can see white, blue, boom, boom. White, blue, boom, boom. So their narrative of who fired first is completely wrong, or who assaulted who is completely wrong.
Well, and now, if you have a gun that is holstered, and it is secured in some way, whether you're talking about a kidney pouch, you're talking about hip, whatever you've got, the number of people that can take that out of its holster, take the safety off, which you should have on when it's on you, and you're not deploying it, and you should only raise that muzzle when you intend to murder another human being, right? Otherwise you keep your finger out of the trigger well, all the good gun hygiene and whatnot, and the number of people who could open up.
There is no doubt that this man had skills.
The amount of to do that in under 2 seconds. The number of people who are not in the special forces.
Yeah, that's
some form of
training comes with that reaction comes from training.
Yeah,
he is according to what I'm hearing through the grapevine, the guy that is the shooter is a veteran.
So, I mean, that's really unusual. It does seem like he reacted so quickly. That he, is it even, I'm not going to say that this is what the case is, but is it in the realm of possibility that something like this could have been planned by both sides? Or
this day and age, I don't put anything out of the possibility. Absolutely none, especially here. Nothing in Portland is reality. That's the sad truth.
And certainly when we look at the sort of the inspiration for some of the stuff, which seems to come from the Russian playbook, the Russians are very good at this sort of cross enemy lines active measures. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility in their world to be playing both sides. It's sort of what they strive for.
Didn't RDM just mention Portland a couple of days ago himself?
Artem,
I believe I saw a tweet of his mentioning Portland.
Yeah, I'm going to go to that in a second because there's so many interesting things there. But let me pull that up.
There's Artem Plushin, but you go back to 1880 with the Okhrana the secret police of the Tsar infiltrating labor movements so that when peaceful labor protesters were going to, hey, I'd like to not have my fingers lopped off at work and I'd like to sleep more than an hour. When they would go protest there, they would have their secret police infiltrate, figure out who's who, figure out the leaders, and then give the Cossacks or whoever a chance to, the opportunity to beat the crap out of the guys and send them home. So the Russians have been doing that, and unless people think that, that was a long time ago. Well, hold on. The Cheka under Lenin took over from the Okhrana, and it was basically, it wasn't the same guys. I think they had a purge, but they took that tradecraft and ran with it. So they got 140 years of practice with this. So it's not necessarily.
And now they have technology to do it even better.
And they can send that out globally to paint a picture of America. They can and this is the thing with the social media that is so incredibly poisonous, and that we've got to get regulation on as fast as possible. Having private companies that have the algorithms to send that video to people that are sensitive to that and might want to vote based on that, or will be agitated by that psychologically, that they are measuring that and sending out videos like that with a purpose. You combine that with some foreign powers, and man, you got some problems. And we have some problems because it's happening.
And
and there's a big reasons why Portland is such a target too. It's not just about Joey Gibson and his little gang of thugs. There's a bigger story here, and I think I mentioned to you guys earlier. Sondland is from here. Sondland and Ted Wheeler go way back since early 2000s.
You mean Gordon Sondland, our ambassador?
I
mean ambassador to the United. Yes.
The European Union, who considers Ukraine part of the European Union, which it's not, but he's the one having
Mr. Quid Pro Quo.
Yeah, that guy.
Mr. Talking to the president on an unsecured cell phone at a cafe in front of people. That guy.
That guy.
Tell us more about that.
That guy.
I'm all ears.
He's at the hotel.
Well,
with the mayor.
I'm not totally deep in this yet, and I need to, and I've got some friends working on this. But they're back in the. Oh, what happened here?
Oh, can you hear us still?
Yeah, I just had a pop up. What the heck are you doing, phone? Okay.
That's like
now, where was I?
Several times a day, several times an hour. Well, when you're ready, are you still there? You can still hear us?
Yeah, Mr. Sondland he kind of worked for Ted Kulongoski for a while. He's the one who got Ted Wheeler as the Treasury of the State back in 2010, and they've been connected ever since.
That's interesting. He works in the hotel business as well.
Portland has he worked in the hotel business. He owns 9 here, including the Governor, the Heathman, which is our top notch. I mean, it's 5-star, one of the big hotels here. He's got his foot all over. He is the 4th largest real estate investment firm in all of Portland and Oregon.
Unbelievable. That's really interesting.
It's a lot. And now we have the Ritz-Carlton come here.
Everyone wants a Ritz-Carlton in their city, especially.
So that's one connection. He kind of plays in the background in politics. He does a lot of philanthropy. He does a lot of good stuff, no doubt. But this connection between, we know the connection and Trump. That's been on for years. They've known each other for a long time. So it's nothing new that there's a connection to Portland. Now, I could tell you this about Portland. I was in San Jose in the 80s when the dot-com boom hit. I went through 20 years of that. It was crazy. I used to work with a lot of the companies down there. I got to see all the stuff that was happening, which is pretty crazy. And San Jose blew up. Well, that's now happening in Portland. And we have some big-ass companies here like Nike, Intel, Google, Amazon, and they're building big plants here. They're spending big bucks, especially out in Prineville, Oregon. I mean, the big money is coming to this town. Major League Baseball is coming. This town is booming right now. You can look out my window right now. There's like 9 cranes in the sky.
Interesting.
That's they want a piece of that. Mm-hmm. They want a piece of all of this.
They sure do, or probably do.
Anyways, that's what I see.
Connections here. We've got Sondland. Now we spoke about Roger Stone. Here's that photo you were talking about from 2016 when he introduces when he brings the Proud Boys over to a place in Salem, Oregon, which I guess is
that's the Proud Boys with him.
Yeah, and that's tweet from Alex Jones.
Correct. That's where Cape Brown is. That's the capital.
Okay, and Alex Jones is involved somehow because why not? And you've got the makings of an interesting group of people who are very tied into the Trump universe as they head into an election in 2016.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That, you didn't have the Proud Boys there, right? Well, the Proud Boys were created in 2016.
The thing with the Northwest. Remember back when all the big the white supremacist groups, they were all out in Hayden Lake, in Idaho, out in that area. Mm-hmm. They got booted out of Idaho and they wound up moving out. Well, they wound up moving to Washington and Oregon. Clackamas is where Identity Europa's big base is. Mm-hmm. Adam Waffen is right across the border in Washington.
Oh, those
Portland
guys
is in between those two.
Domestic terrorism?
Were they?
Those guys who were indicted for domestic terrorism?
Yes. Adam Waffen now has about been busted up for the most part. That Adam Waffen.
Oh boy.
That's good.
So,
and they come to Portland quite often, but they don't come and beat people up, which is they don't do it unless there's protests. Then they come and do their thuggery.
So here's a little
bit more. Can we just talk about?
And now
I was just gonna. Sorry, man. I was just gonna bring up Gavin McInnes. I got a bit of a story here. So founded by Canadian Gavin McInnes. I ran into Gavin on Huffington Post Live in 2013. I'd written a piece about masculinity after we had all these young men who were shooting places up. I wrote a thing about why you get, the transition from boyhood to manhood. We're getting people lost in the cracks. This is an essay I wrote 7 years ago. And I got invited on to talk about masculinity, something. And they had Gavin McInnes on, who bellowed. They had some women on the panel, and it was, women don't want to work outside of the home, and they're miserable, and they just want to be barefoot and pregnant. Ah! And he was just, it was like lucha libre wrestling or whatnot. And I, tried to get a word in edgewise, and the producers let him do it. And I was like, who was that asshole? And so I looked him up, and this guy his mother's a professor of business up in Ottawa. He's from Ottawa. I'm like, so I'm gonna go straight. So your mom is a business professor, and you're down here screaming about how women shouldn't work outside the home, and they're letting you run around and do all this. And he helped start Vice and whatnot. Then we have the election, and all of a sudden he's a Canadian Nazi. And the media is all following him around. Oh, aren't these Nazis so interesting? But, this is just some dude from Ottawa who's hanging out apparently with Roger Stone. And just looks like Russian information ops that everybody's been given all this oxygen to. And they tied, I've seen this in other places, but, tie into the Adam Waffen, God, that would just make them domestic terrorists. Yeah. That's like Al-Qaeda on our soil.
Because, they would have made a lot of money.
My God, yes. Adam Waffen is bad.
Vice would have made McInnes very well.
It's kind of funny with Adam Waffen, though. You know what made them fall apart?
Go ahead.
They were all busted up because of the leader of. He was pretending that he was making deals with a Mexican drug cartel, and he was trying to protect them, and these guys were going to protect them, and he was making all this money, and he needed financing, and all these guys helped pitch in money, and blah 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 blah. He wound up ripping off all the guys instead of this Mexican drug cartel. It never existed. It was all fabricated, and he wound.
We were going to be
getting bugged by one of his own members. His ass in, and down they went. Right, it was. It was the funniest thing I ever seen, man. Watching that on TV was like, oh my God, he was stealing from his own crew.
Well,
so down went Adam Waffen. Bye.
It happens every once in a while. Right. I want to point out two more things about this slide. What are these? They both have these clothing brand clothing items that are their insignia, right? The Proud Boys have this thing that looks like I don't know what the brand is, but I guess there was one company that got in trouble with these polo shirts that are black with the yellow stripes, easy to identify.
If you look at the emblem, it's kind of like the Leafs around a $50 on a coin. Leafs on the outside. That's kind of the emblem.
And the Patriot Prayer guys have this cap with sort of a dystopian-looking dark flag, I guess, American flag.
They're boy bands.
Boy bands.
They're boy bands that women won't go on dates with them, and so they get their own merch. This is like
it's just a drinking club.
Well, with weapons now, that seems to go
with
around
FBI files as thick as your head. Knuckleheads.
But it is knuckleheads.
Well, the guys that we saw in town, the guys that we saw in Portland with trucks, I'm going to say the majority of them weren't violent. The majority of them weren't here to cause problems. But the Proud Boys were within them. Their truck had all the license plates either blacked out, not there, or they stole license plates from somewhere else and had them on their vehicles. They wore their shirts, and they also had boogaloos with them. And these two guys in their white truck was with this group. It's a group of about 4 trucks, all Proud Boys, that were causing the majority of the chaos here. Mm-hmm. Now, here's something that most people don't realize, is these guys came with barricades and paint guns, okay? Now, Joey Gibson did ask them to carry their concealed weapons, so I imagine many of them did, but none of them were ever brandished or used. They used their paint guns and physical violence. These guys, as they drove through town, they were harassing people. They were throwing stuff. As a matter of fact, the shooter's in a video with the truck, and he's standing there watch as these guys are throwing projectiles all over the place, like cars and people around them, and they're shooting their paint guns. And the dude, he's just standing there watching them. He didn't even get involved. All he did was watch. He didn't talk. He didn't say nothing. He didn't yell at him. He just talked. Just watched. And these guys were threatening him. They were threatening passerbys. But they're the ones who came with the bear mace, the paint guns. Okay, they're the ones that came with those. The shooter did not have neither. He had a handgun. Okay, so when the guys, Chandler and Jay, they came through town, and the guy who did the video for CNN even says that was one of the trucks shooting paintball at passersby as they're driving down the street. Well, they saw these guys. They pulled their truck over and parked it near the parking garage. You don't see the truck because they parked it around the corner. They walked from the truck to the south, down 3rd, and that guy, the shooter, was walking across the street in front of them. He was not walking towards them. He was not walking at them. He was walking away across the street from them. They came down the street and approached him. Now, whatever happened in that instance, when the shots were fired, one thing is definitely clear. The mace was fired first, the blue paintball was fired second, and the handgun was fired twice, third. Get where I'm going with this?
Yep.
Now, you can see in the video, it's pretty grainy and everything, but one of the things that's talking about all these people yelling and whatever, in my opinion, I believe it was Jay himself that yelled, hey, here goes one over here. And they started moving towards the dude. And when they were yelling and screaming at him, and that's when he spun around and faced them, and then that's when the mace was fired off and the paint gun at the same time. I would say, in my opinion, Jay had the mace, Chandler had the paint gun, the shooter had the real gun. Now, whatever transpired before that, whatever arguments they were in, whatever altercations there were, apparently they didn't shoot at each other at any point on that time, but they maybe have argued. They may have crossed paths. But in my opinion, the guy walking across the street, the shooter, walking away from them, not towards them. So Chandler's whole idea that this guy came at him, they assassinated him, is bogus.
Mm-hmm. It sure does seem
almost like they were.
It's absolutely bogus. We got to remember who came with the paint. That's always possible.
So I'm from rural Vermont, and it's funny you mentioned doing these things in liberal cities as opposed to more rural places. Vermont is probably a lot like Oregon. It looks like Oregon a bit, but we're armed to the teeth. And I'll tell you, if you walk up to somebody with something that looks like a gun in a grocery store parking lot, the chances of that person packing heat are pretty good. If you're talking about the fall around deer season, the grandmothers
these days, same here.
All right, so you don't.
Same here.
I was trained from a young age. You don't go on people's land. You don't get aggressive with people because you'll get lead poisoning real easy. That's not to say we have very, 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 very low crime as a result. It's interesting, though, that they're doing this kind of thing of, we're going to walk around with and mace people and have firearm-like, weaponry that might be indistinguishable in the dark. And then, and I'm not the FBI. I don't want to speculate.
And it was dark, and there's no way. When a guy's pointing something at you, you have no idea knowing whether it's a gun, a stick, whatever. You have no idea. You just know that somebody's pulling a weapon on you, and especially if you have training, experience, are a vet, are a security guard, or any of those things, you are going to respond pretty darn quick.
Yep.
Because it's in your DNA.
That's the whole point.
I know this for a fact because I can respond pretty damn quick in a dark situation. Trust me. So that's what I saw here. He was pretty quick on the trigger, but that's from training. That's he didn't get. He hit the dude center mast.
Yeah, that's not.
That wasn't luck
in a high pressure situation.
So there's lots of still
in a high pressure situation in the dark.
The investigation is going to have to continue here, and we'll figure out more about that shooting. But I want to just expand a little bit out of this. So the one thing that people have been pointing out is that there is a similarity, and I thought originally this was far-fetched, but it isn't really, between the trucks that ISIS uses in the Middle East and the trucks that these Trump guys are using in all these events. Because they all have the same, they're just pickup trucks, of course, but, the flags coming off the back of them, the weapons being waved in the air. It's not dissimilar. And them all being, as a caravan, traveling together as a caravan is another indicator. And normally
somebody somebody put a picture on here the other day on my post. It was a picture of the Trump trucks going down whatever street it was, long line, and then they put the ISIS long line right next to it.
Yeah. That's what
so
you see
side by side and going, does this look familiar to you?
On the right is Trump.
Yeah, but I'm talking the picture. This was very long line, just like a big long line of ISIS flag trucks. They put them side by side. It's a gorgeous picture to go see. Does that look familiar?
Now, if you were starting an
I call it, as I said last week, Al Qaeda.
Yeah, the Al Qaeda. I remember you saying that. So if you're trying to start at least create a perception that you're starting sort of an insurgency in a country, you might look at other playbooks from other parts of the world, and you might look at ISIS as a potential place to study from. In fact, you might have experience in setting up some of those insurgencies in other parts of the world, and you might use that same playbook.
Just might have,
insurgencies in the United States.
And you ever see Al Qaeda's uniform? A bunch of the guys that just happened to be a 1-to-1 match to the Russian summer season regular military uniforms. Yeah,
interesting. And we say the Russians because the Russians, this is sort of their deal. The Russians have had a long history of playing this kind of game everywhere, whether it's Ukraine or Georgia or the Middle East or now in the United States. And it's this guy.
Well, for the United States, let's look at the NRA.
Yeah, right, the NRA, exactly. So Gerasimov is their chief, the head of their army, or I think he was, maybe still is the head of their army. He came up with this thing called the Gerasimov's Principles, or doctrine at least, and it's based on these principles. And he describes this as a hybrid war, which is when you use special operations forces and internal opposition to create a permanently operating front throughout the entire territory of the enemy state, as well as informational actions, devices, and means that are constantly being perfected. So the stuff I've got highlighted there, you've got special operational forces, which is either, could be the Green Beret guys who attacked Ukraine, or could be some of these guys that are marching through our streets right now. Internal opposition, sure, they've got a lot of that, building up tension between both sides. Antifa and the boys, the Proud Boys, or Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. And then they've got a permanent operating front, is what we'll describe it as, which is interesting because it really is. It would be that if you could control that whole set of groups, you'd have a pretty interesting front.
They did it. Here's the deal. Here's how they did it. Here's how they did it. They did the NRA. We all know this. Just like they did Facebook, just like they did Fox News. The Russians did all three of those. So we know this. Okay, use the NRA to push, especially down in the Koch brothers, to push this Second Amendment. They're going to take your guns crap. And they've been pushing that for years and years and years, especially with Obama. They pushed it for 8 straight freaking years that Obama's going to take your guns. They're going to take your guns. They're going to take your guns. So they scared the shit out of these people. Now the Proud Boys and people like Patriot Prayer kind of took advantage of that. And part of these groups is the 3%ers and the Oath Keepers. Mm-hmm. Now the 3%ers are, you know what they are. They're big Second Amendment. Don't take my guns. We're going to defend ourselves. Blah blah blah. This is what this is all about. This is the tool that they use to get all this division. And then they use the black people as the excuse or the reason why we need guns, and they need to be dealt.
That's the internal opposition.
Sorry to say that, but hey, sometimes reality kind of bites.
Well, can we talk about Ferguson a little bit?
That's why they took over Black Lives Matter. That's why they took over Ferguson's Black Lives Matter.
And so, Eric,
we know the Russians took that. Black Lives Matter is a great organization, and it started under very good pretenses: police violence against black people. Well, Russia comes in and steals it and starts making it into all kinds of other shit. Besides that, so they stretched it all the way to all these other issues. So they kind of put that in the lump with the Second Amendment, and the black people are all causing all the crimes and all the problems and all the Democratic cities, and Portland's tore up because of all the black people in downtown and blah blah blah, which is kind of funny because there's hardly any black people that live down. They live northeast Portland, away from here, like miles away from here.
So I live in St. Louis, and I've been here since since before the Ferguson events of 2014 and beyond. And, I can't attribute to any particular nation state outside of knowing that the Russian intelligence services did amplify content online, certainly. And I know that there were foreign agents on the ground here that's been reported. But I'll just tell you, in general, you just had such an influx of people who were not from St. Louis, and they codenamed this Ferguson. Well, Ferguson's a 17,000 person municipality in the greater St. Louis County, St. Louis City area of 1.5 million. And, are there black neighborhoods? Absolutely. North St. Louis, East St. Louis, and swaths of North County tend to have a higher population of African Americans compared to other parts of the St. Louis metro area. Ferguson's actually quite mixed, and it's not. They tried to make it look like it was a war zone. They always came at night. You could take Disneyland, lob in some tear gas, and put one guy throwing a can of soup, and it's going to look like Sarajevo in '95, right?
It's a soup.
Portland is on fire, for instance.
I would go drive around while all the Ferguson stuff was happening. I would go drive around there and take pictures of here's the city park with the slide down into the pool. Ooh. But they would go and they'd get like 3 angles of one street, and they're like, St. Louis is on fire. It's like, well, come on out here. It's not, and we were getting the same situation you right. are, but talking to people who are actually part of the activist community here and who, have a very, very serious set of, reasonable, concerns about reform of the local justice system, the role of the police, economic tensions, who know the area, who live here. And, their stuff is based on reality. They're not ideologues. They're like, hey, I'd like to not get pulled over 9 times in a month for going 2 miles an hour over the speed limit, and then being transferred between 7 jails because you guys invented a parking ticket that I actually paid 2 years ago. That's the kind of stuff that is getting criticized in St. Louis. Ferguson happens, or rather, Darren Wilson shoots Michael Brown. He's on the ground for 4 hours. The Ferguson Police Department particularly riles up the local population to Ferguson, not all of St. Louis, but the people were on Canfield Drive having a memorial for Michael Brown. This did not get reported well enough at all. They had candles and stuffed animals where his body had laid, and the neighbors came and they were just being present and having a vigil there. And the Ferguson police came by with their SUVs and canine units and told everyone to go home. And that is what caused the riot, or not the riot, that's what caused the unrest when they drove through the candles and cards and all that on the way out. It was almost like they were trying to provoke something. It was the absolute worst thing you could do.
Is that right?
That's 2014.
2014. Sorry,
that's 2014. And so then you get some people going, we've had it. These guys started ramping up the amount of tickets they were getting on us and pulling us over in the street. The amount of money that they started taking out of the local population in just Ferguson went from $1 million to $3 million inside of 3 years. So they tripled the amount of activity that they were doing, harassing
pressured the local community. That's all. That way. Interesting. And it's interesting. 2015 that's built into the timeline. It's you have 2015 is the Proud Boys and the Trump campaign launching. It's interesting to see those things in connection. 2016,
2017, we're big. We're big.
Yeah. Early 2014. So late 2013, Trump goes and does Miss Universe Moscow. Right? He comes back, and for the first time on radio, I believe, he says, after everybody's rioting and in the streets and this place is all gone to hell, they're going to be begging us to make America great again. That was about February, March of 2014, I believe. The events of Ferguson happened in August of 2014. And you have these initial acts. You have an officer-involved shooting. It's not the only of its kind. It's pretty ugly. Things happen like I believe the medical examiner, quote, didn't have batteries in his camera, which isn't, there's other ways to take images these days. So that was weird. There's a lot of things that are still under investigation, I come to understand. And then you had some local police response. And then all of a sudden you have a local protest. We're going to go down with this is the kind of thing protest is for. No, that was uncool, guys. And then you have all of the people come in for everywhere. And then, somebody goes and gets DHS federal equipment of mine resistant, troop transports and sniper rifles. And instead of doing all the things that anyone in either the police or the armed forces, anybody who's ever been as a peacekeeping force knows that you do not do with firearms in a crowd full of civilians because you will cause an uprising. They do exactly the opposite of when everyone's trained. Almost like they knew what the training was. They were just doing the things that would be the worst possible. And then you've got some folks who are coming in from out of town who are going to block the highway, and you got somebody burns an AutoZone and things that are not when you have just the locals.
Hey, my umbrella man.
Yeah, what's that?
Called him umbrella man. I put a post up that night. Umbrella man. When he first did that, I jumped right on that and said, "This is an op," and turns out it was.
Yep.
It was part of the beginning of the. Oh yeah, the umbrellas have become a big thing, and we get them a lot here in Portland. And it's the agitators.
And so why call them umbrellas?
Apparently they carry.
Well, it's a symbol. Okay. Remember the whole story about Chamberlain and Hitler and the umbrella. Actually, the umbrella is a sign of appeasement, correct? It was a symbol. It became a symbol of appeasement, as they say. Well, these guys kind of hijacked the stupid thing.
Yeah.
Well,
these guys, whatever the reasons were, whatever you believe on that, it doesn't really matter. These guys hijacked the umbrella as a symbol of appeasement. So they use it as a signal to their buddies to start causing problems.
And it's
once the umbrellas go up
towards Chamberlain,
the shit begins.
Hitler for references, because that's very, very American.
I know it is strange, and I just put that connection because of the.
Oh, that's a great one.
We could also the umbrella man at the Kennedy's assassination too, if you want. I mean, what the heck?
I mean, they're common items, but if you're a Russian handler, I'm not saying that these guys are directly being handled by somebody from the SVR or anything like that. But if you're way back, if you're the one-star general and you're coming up with the idea, right? That's the kind of crap that the like Russian intelligence loves. Those symbols that you're talking about of the Chamberlain. It's like the Nazis.
Oh, they love symbolism.
British. Oh yeah.
So
symbolism is their key. We all know this.
That's a good segue to this thing. So you mentioned Artem Kalushik earlier, and I'm ruining his name, and I don't care. Artem is a... Well, this is his post from the other day, just before Portland blew up. And Artem is, for people who don't know, he's sort of Donald Trump's whisperer, Russian whisperer on Twitter. He basically predicts what Donald Trump is going to do a day or 2 weeks in advance. Donald Trump suddenly magically does that.
No. He don't predict shit.
Yeah. He
don't predict a goddamn thing.
Yeah, he's a well, he tells it.
I have the same boss.
And so Artem works for both Putin and the UAE, which is also interesting. And he posts all these controversial and sometimes provocative tweets. And this came out just after Kenosha and just before Portland. And it says, as you can say, enjoy the show. And there's the anonymous guy. And of course, that reference of the Bible is the same thing. We pull it up here because it's here, is the same way that Donald Trump held the Bible outside on June 1st. Symbolism.
Really?
Everybody.
Now,
right
don't forget the burning of the Bibles in Portland either. Yeah. Don't forget that.
Oh, right. Interesting.
That was also a Russian op.
Interesting. And so enjoy the show.
It never happened.
Artem, go ahead. Tell us about that story. Actually, I'm interested. What happened in the Bible?
They had a big old burn. They were burning stuff in here, and somehow RT, or I believe it was Rupley, got the picture, and they shared it all over the place trying to say that Oregon was burning Bibles, and that's what Antifa's doing. They're downtown, they're tearing up the federal building, and they're burning Bibles, and they're going to destroy all of God and everything, and we got to stop them. It was bullshit. It was fake. There was no Bible thrown in the fire. It was just like any other Photoshop bullshit that we see. Well, there was no burning of Bibles in Portland.
And so then the next thing he does is he sends out this ridiculous thing. And I've got a video of this where he's like basically doing a James Bond, Dr. Evil kind of thing in a car. And
I saw that too.
Backwards. And I can't even read what it says here because it's the writing is so small on the computer. But
in God we trust. I work harder than God. If he had hired me, he would have made the world by Thursday. Nazi sign for guys.
Well done. You've got a calling there. And just to drive it home, he has a little message for Adam Schiff. Do you want to do this?
Live with that image the rest of your life of a big mouth, a slippery Schiff.
Ta-da.
I just can't. Just shut.
Yeah.
Can we shut them off from the New York banking, please? Can we have them
significant?
I mean, just enough.
So this is the kind of crap.
I remember when this jerk used to follow me.
We're not just dealing with a local uprising when you're seeing all these stories, and you're not dealing with a spontaneous uprising that's happening in black communities against the suburbs. That is not happening. What's happening is a Russian effort, or Russian plus others effort, to destabilize the United States. And anyone who is in their right mind looking at the events that are happening in the world right now would know that it benefits Donald Trump for that fear to grow. The more that fear is heightened and the more incidents we have, the more Donald Trump does.
Did not Kellyanne say it the best?
Yeah, good.
Did not Kellyanne Conway say it the best?
What did she say?
He needs the chaos. The chaos helps him. So he does this on purpose. She admitted it. She just did it just a few days ago. She admitted it straight up that he does this shit on purpose because it works.
It's the Russians as well. And anyone who thought Russia...
Well, no, he's got a whole apparatus behind him and the Russians. And he's got North Korea, and he's got Iran, and everybody else chipping him. Let's not forget China. They throw their shit in here, too.
Yeah.
China is really big here in Portland.
So
China is big. As a matter of fact, China and the Saudis are big here in Portland.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Huh. Russia, China, Saudis. Weird.
Oh, absolutely.
Like an alliance of some sort.
Oh, absolutely. The Saudis were here. Sondland and the president of the Portland State University, which there's a connection there. The Saudis were coming here and going to school. And this was about, 3 years ago. They were coming for 2 summers. I've got pictures of all their cars, which were awesome hot rods, by the way. Mm-hmm. But the Saudis were all over Portland for a long time. And then one of the Saudi kids wound up killing a female pedestrian, ran her over, killed her, and he went to court, and the Saudis actually came to Portland, grabbed him off the steps of the courthouse, and took him out of this country. Within 2 months, all of the Saudis that were going to school here were gone.
I remember reading about that. That's really interesting.
So they were going to school here for a couple of years.
What we need to do is get this.
And this was all from the royal family.
Because I think that there is a situation here where people are actually frightened. Really, people are very, very fearful of the chaos that's happening in the country. Some people are legitimately fearful of the chaos that they're seeing. Some people are fearful of the fact that Donald Trump may stay in power because of that. but everyone's genuinely terrified of what the potential might be. And the thing is, it's just an op. It's not even, it's like play theater. It's not really happening. It's just a bunch of guys driving around in trucks, waving flags and waving weapons around. The black
Why do you think they show up with
against the white community and are not coming after the suburbs? They're not doing that. They are just living their lives in the suburbs with their white neighbors, and they don't care about all this other stuff. They're not. This is not their priority. What's coming in and heightening it all up is
Roger they do Stone, have a legitimate
boys. It's all these other guys joining in and heightening up the tension. It's an op. It's an image.
It's an op.
Pull it apart.
It's an op.
Yeah.
It's an op.
You can see it.
Why do you think they came with paint guns?
Right. It's paint guns.
They came with paint guns to fight a war. Yeah. Paint guns. They put the fear in you. They're going to bring all these AR. They're going to bring all these guns. They're going to bring all these weapons. They're going to do all this damage. They're going to protect the city, and they come with paint guns.
Right.
You know what?
They put the fear in everybody. They show up, put more fear in everybody. It's an op.
So, when you describe that there's, guys who are financing and handling very calmly, and one guy gets in and, riles people up, but then he's not there to actually, do anything kinetic, that kind of bespeaks that they're recruiting maybe from online, chat rooms, Reddit, what have you. And they're getting useful idiots. They're literal idiots in a neurological sense, that don't really understand
the same as the president
of what they're doing. They are like, yeah, this is gonna, they create a sense. You create an in-group, out-group sense, and we got to do something with this energy, guys.
Same reason why people join gangs.
Right. Yeah. And, and for them, like, I guess some of these guys to also traffic drugs and make money. But, Zev and I, we get our, we get the energy out by doing podcasts and looking up things on and to read and interpret for people. And some people want to grab their paintball guns and go into town, but they're too dumb to realize, like, if you come with your bear mace and your paintball gun, somebody may shoot you in the chest. If, and they don't realize, like, yeah, we're edgy. It's like, no, you're committing assault, and somebody might discharge a firearm into your torso. And apparently they don't know this. And it seems
they came to play G.I. Joe and found out that doesn't work out well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tragedy, regardless. I mean, someone died, but it is.
I do feel for the kid.
To drive up sentiment in a certain direction, certainly not towards Trump. In fact, if you took the blinders off everybody, they'd be able to see that Donald Trump is in fact provoking all of this, and his supporters are provoking all of this. And this wouldn't be happening if there was no Donald Trump in the White House, which is what we should get. So when Joe Biden goes there tomorrow, I hope he just says, this is an op. You guys are being fooled, and get these guys out of here. They're just a bunch of crazy foreign influenced, maybe foreign paid operatives.
Well, what's good?
I like it.
What's really good is what most people don't know is the FBI is working in the background to get these guys. And now one of the big shooters at the first original Patriot Prayer event down here, a month ago, the big guy that was he's actually a wanted felon, and he wasn't supposed to be here either. He's now being sued for $235 million, I think it is, by a protester. He's now going to be wind up. That's another Patriot Prayer Proud Boy member that's going to get wrapped up in federal charges also. So all the guys that are getting arrested here in Portland, they have a connection to any of these groups somehow, some way. They have no connection to Antifa whatsoever.
Interesting.
And I've been hearing that's the same thing going across the country, that all the people that are actually getting arrested for causing the violence, the fires, the whatever, are not Antifa, but members of the Boogaloos, the Proud Boys, or some white supremacist group that's actually, and the FBI has actually shared this information. The DOJ actually shared this information. We just had 74 arrests here in Portland for the protest over the last month. 90% of them were not Antifa. The rest of them were just your regular anarchist. And there's the difference that most people don't understand is there's a difference between Antifa and anarchist. Trump and his people are trying to conflate the two, and they threw in Black Lives Matter to conflate it even more, that those are all the bad groups.
It's unbelievable what these guys are getting away with. It's unbelievable. I want to leave you with one little thing here. Eric Prince, who's always interesting, shows up suddenly. If I pull up the timeline again, you can see the timing of this is interesting, and I would only point it out because it's of the timeline. Hang on a second. Here we go.
Where is he, by the way?
Who knows?
Is he still in UAE or China?
He just disappeared for a while, and now he's I don't know why he showed up, but he showed up on Brian Kilmeade's
running his ass off all over the place.
And so if you look at June 1st was the Bible holding, August 27th, this is a month and a bit later, there's the Kenosha shooting with 17-year-olds shooting two of the protesters of Black Lives Matter, and then there's Eric Prince showing up on August the 28th, I think it says there. The day before, you saw those two tweets from Artem Kalushik, and then on the 30th is the actual shooting in Portland. So let's listen to what Eric Prince told Brian Kilmeade about what he thinks is going on the ground over there.
It seems organized. I've heard that especially in Portland and Seattle, their radios, they know where to hit, they know how to hit, and they have a plan. That is not somebody who's being overcome with emotional rage. This seems to be separate. Have you been able to separate the two?
Look, I have friends in law enforcement. They say they've wrapped up, gangs of kids that were destroying buildings, torching things, throwing rocks in windows, and then they would take pictures. They would send those pictures to a burner, to a non-traceable phone, and they would then be paid in Bitcoin, in blockchain currency. So someone is paying for that subversion, and I truly hope.
The puzzle, Pat. That's front facing. That's
gonna bite him in the ass.
That's projection.
It's
total
projection.
Well, yes, it's projection. Yeah, but that is. You remember when all of a sudden a FISA warrant comes out? Rather, somebody takes the extraordinary measure to release some FISA warrant information about Carter Page in October of 2016. Those are not easy to get a hold of, right? You should, if you ever see one in the wild, you should call the FBI immediately because that should not be out there. And yet one showed up almost as if to say, hey guys, they kind of maybe have an FBI investigation on us. Yeah, you think, assholes? Well, I've heard from my friends in law enforcement. Yeah, Mr. Prince, like you got a lot of friends in serious federal law enforcement, like friends. Perhaps interrogators, yes, these days, but friends, okay, maybe. Hey guys, I hear from law enforcement that they're picking up everyone using Bitcoin and burner phones and that are coordinating. That's getting picked up by law enforcement. Yes, it is, asshole. So that was him telling some of these people down range. Yeah, they might know even.
Bitcoin is traceable, by the way. If you're going to do something on Bitcoin, just remind yourself it's traceable. It's not some secret currency that no one can track. I'll leave you with that note.
It's the whole purpose of Bitcoin.
Ledger.
It's like a big giant trap, is what Bitcoin is.
Exactly.
I got to quote my man. Let's end it with our man Ralph Sergiani, who says, "It is the dumbest way to do illicit activities, and they are using it everywhere." So
on that note, I want to thank you both for being on the show tonight. What an interesting hour and a bit we've had, and hopefully we'll continue this as this goes on, and hopefully it doesn't go on for too long because by November we should have
well, thanks for inviting me, guys.
It's been terrific having you on. Thank you very much, Carl, and thank you, Eric. We'll see you Friday. Cheers, guys.
Take care, guys.
Do you too.
Support Narrative's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe and download.